our first pitch is going to be Malinda McReynolds, and she's going to talk about sharing discipline data through a restorative justice lens. And this is a proposed statewide change. Maya, is our timer ready? Thumbs up. Great. All right, Maya, Malinda, whenever you are ready, you can start talking and we will start our timer.
Okay, wonderful. And speaking of courage, thanks to School Board School, this is my second time being first in an initiative. First inspired to do a TED Talk and now being part of this pitch. And I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity. So my name is Malinda McReynolds. Currently, I am an administrative instructional coach working with Hamilton County Educational Service Center. I am formerly an administrator for 9 years in Cincinnati Public, Milford Schools, in private schools, CHCA, and finally in Princeton City Schools. So here's my pitch. I want everyone for a moment to imagine, and actually I'd like for you to reimagine, how to effectively share disproportionate discipline data publicly and encourage a more focused view of culturally competence through a restorative practice lens. So what does that look like? Currently, unfortunately, in our school systems across the country and historically, there has been zero tolerance policies when it comes to disciplining students. And with these students, the most severe punishment possible to those who break rules. So here's a scenario for you. Carlos, a student, we can say he's a high school student, had a heated argument with his parents before leaving school, running late. Here's zero tolerance. He gets to school. What does he see? A metal detector, a police search. The teacher scolds him. After scolding him, she calls a school resource officer. After calling that school resource officer, he ends up in a juvenile detention facility that the school has. So what does that mean? Each year in Georgia, the research shows that in Athens' anti-discrimination movement, it aims to dismantle patterns of systemic racism by promoting fair policy reforms opposing mass incarceration. The latest research, some that you can see on the school bus here, but most importantly says on average, states in the US spend approximately $88,000 to do what? Incarcerate children. And that includes parole and probation, as opposed to spending $10,000 to educate them. What kinds of sense does that make? I have no idea. So that is 6 times more than money for colleges and universities. Another research here in the state of Ohio, it's the Department of Education Student Report Card. The data is from around the time of COVID. And what does the data show us? You can look at it and see very clearly in Ohio's most recent report on the state school discipline disparities, in and out of school suspensions and expulsions, it's evident. Today, these findings show that we need to have a policy, public policy action to do something differently. The current theme is the number of African-American boys who are suspended 3 times the rate of their classmates for minor infractions. And unfortunately, these students often will fall behind academically, and they're part of our country's increase in the dropout rate. So now what does restorative practices look like? If you look on the right-hand side here, restorative practices means Carlos walks into school and his day looks completely different. There's an implementation of policies and procedures and the code of conduct within a school system, in addition, of course, to instruction, which we do give 100% of our attention. But what about the behaviors? How do we, as adults, begin to think and do things differently? Well, the teachers and the administrators, they welcome all of the students into the community because it is a community. It's about relationships and building relationships. Well, the teacher waits until after class with Carlos and finds out more information about what happened to him. There are peer mediators that are in place, and there's a support system. And in the end, Carlos is not made to feel like a criminal under a zero tolerance policy, but a human being who has had a bad day. And so moving beyond, if you look here at some of the data is sharing that policies already exist. The Initiative on Gender, Justice, and Opportunity shows that 21 states and the District of Columbia already has legislation implemented. Restorative practices, it improves school climate, connectedness, promotes the student health and well-being as well. And in addition, it lowers the rates of discipline disparities. So what does that mean for our country? What does that mean for us? And here we are. This is my proposal: a leadership governance oversight task force so that we can have equitable schools audit all around the state. A 3-year period where we have phases in which there's an appointed task force. Let's say CPS Schools uses current data and practices as an example to do so. This committee, which will include board members, if they so be it, the superintendent, teachers, definitely students being part of this initiative as well, to develop, test, refine a plan that will provide feedback and ensure the implementation of new practices and recognize the biases that we have in school systems. In School Board School, we've already created a proposal. Mike Moraski, I don't know if you remember, but I was in School Board School 3. We wrote a white paper, and we have talked about what the implementation looks like. Here's the bottom line. It's easier to build stronger children than it is to repair broken men. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Malinda. That was very powerful. Lots of great feedback in the chat. We're going to move our panel back to the screen and see what questions or feedback they might have about Malinda's idea. We'll take about 3 minutes, so a couple of any questions or Mike, I see you're already unmuted. Go for it.
Be careful with Elisa Hoffman. You unmute. You're on. You're on. Yes, I do remember the white paper. It's good to see you. Thank you for that. As you know, this is an issue that's pretty important to me, as does my colleague, Ms. Bolton, and the superintendent. And while, you know, we've been doing a pretty good job, or at least better, and continuously try to improve with the restorative practice. And I was actually on a call today with a researcher from Memphis about SROs, which Ms. Bolton will hear about later. Not right now. My only question for you is, in addition to this oversight committee, which seems like a sound idea, I saw a number of items that I would call policy in there, but I don't want to assume anything. So is there a specific policy ask or change for like Rep. Isaacson, for example? Like it sounded like it might be state stuff, or is it for like our policy committee at CPS?
Both. It's both. Whoever's going to hear and whoever's going to enact the policy, let's get the work done.
Okay. And then the policy then is like part and parcel of the oversight committee, correct? The policy is not the oversight
correct.
Committee. Okay.
That is correct.
Great. How about
Absolutely.
Representative Isaacson?
I'd be willing to be part of the work. Just let me know.
Well, I'm all in, Malinda. I love this. I'll just give you, this is mostly to be helpful in terms of where I think this is the type of thing that in the budget, which happens every other year, so what happened next year, you'd want to introduce as an amendment that would be for a study committee, or a study, or just a study overall of what it would take to implement these. Now, I'm not going to tell you that the legislature is going to jump up and down to pass that. That would be you'd have to go a few states over probably for that. But it doesn't mean that it's not worth introducing the idea and starting, especially, and this is why I like Mike's question, with a district where you can point to, here's what they did, here's what it looked like there. So, you know, now let's look at, okay, now let's try it in a rural district. And my last, Natalie, I see your comment, and we're not going to open that can of worms at the moment. But the one thing I'll say is that I would encourage you to try and find a partner in this if you do want to come to the legislature in a rural, especially in an Appalachian community that has a similar issue, because it makes it so much easier if the advocates are bipartisan for us to then bring a bipartisan issue forward. And the issues are so similar in those districts. But thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually looking for the next steps, if I may quickly, inspired again by School Board School to work on the doctorate. So thank you for those ideas.
Those are great. Well, thank you so much. And I love it. And I think we've got ideas to move this pitch forward already, even with our first pitch. It's so exciting. So thank you to Malinda.